that they made an unsubstantiated claim. And it was a reasonable complaint because it took the claim about the benefits of stout to be a sort of holistic judgment. So the claim that it's good for us doesn't simply mean that all or most of us will like it, or that drinking it will strengthen some natural tendencies, perhaps by making us more thirsty when we think of stout. So both of these claims might be true even if stout were bad for us. So I suppose the claim means that drinking Guinness will strengthen some natural tendencies and weaken others in ways that will strengthen the natural system as a whole. So to show that stout's good for us, we are presupposing some judgment about our nature as a whole. And this sort of judgment doesn't simply record what happens to us without intervention, what's natural in that sense. On the contrary, medical interventions such as transfusions of blood or transplantations of organs may interfere with the ordinary course of nature and may conflict with strong natural tendencies, but they may still be in accord with nature, according to the holistic conception. So I think these holistic judgments about nature show that Mill's approaches to nature that I referred to before rest on a misunderstanding. If we believe that illness is bad for us and health is good for us, we're not thinking of us as we would if our natural tendencies were left without any human intervention. We're thinking of us as the proper working of the system that constitutes our human nature. Though further inquiry may be to understand these judgments completely, we are treating them as familiar and indispensable. So section 5, against a subjectivist conception of human good and welfare. I just want to show how the simple judgment that we're talking about have some broader implications for questions other than simple judgments about health. We rely on some views about a person's nature if we reject a subjectivist view of a person's good. And by subjectivist, I mean roughly this, that a person's good is their pleasure, or the satisfaction of their desires, or the satisfaction of their rational desires, or informed desires. So the naturalist view argues that this subjectivist conception of welfare leaves out an essential element. What's good for a tree or a dog or a human being depends on the different natures and characteristics of these organisms, and a person's desires are correct only if they match what's good for the kind of thing a person is. Now, subjectivist views that a person's good consists in getting what they want are open to a very simple objection that we can want what's bad for us. In response to this objection, you might try to modify the subjectivist view by appealing to hypothetical wants or idealized wants, like to say what you would want if you were, for instance, fully informed or less impulsive or something like that. But such modifications seem to face a dilemma. I just state this dilemma now. If you want to ask about it, I can go into it a bit more. First horn, the hypothetical wants are defined non-circularly. They don't reintroduce some reference to good. But in that case, they'll face plausible objections through counterexamples that even well-informed agents can want what's bad for them, etc. Second horn of the dilemma, we can avoid these counterexamples if we reintroduce some reference to the agent's good, but then we haven't really given the subjectivist account of it. Now, if you were a fairly resolute defender of a subjectivist account of a person's good, you should choose the first part of the dilemma, and you should argue that the sorts of objections I mentioned are incorrect. But I think we're entitled to reject such objections only if we're satisfied that no sense can be made of the assumptions underlying them. And naturalism suggests a way to understand and to defend reasonable objections to a subjectivist conception of welfare, because it suggests that a person's interest is determined by what the person is, and to say by her actual traits and characteristics. And this conception of welfare is naturalist in the sense I'm talking about, because it presupposes a view of a person's nature as a system rather than as a collection of traits and desires. If we reject a subjectivist account of interests, we recognize that we may desire something when something else would be better for us. But satisfaction of our mistaken desire satisfies some part of our nature, hence it's being against our nature as consists in being contrary to some system that's distinct from a mere collection of desires and traits. So section 6, about human development, a naturalist conception of welfare helps to explain duties or responsibilities towards people that involve our forming or shaping their desires in various ways. So we might, for instance, be able to form someone's desires so that they're easy to satisfy if we want to minimize the number of unsatisfied desires, or so that they result in the person's greatest pleasure. But we may not have done our best to promote their welfare. If children growing into adults never acquire anything beyond the desires of young children, they're missing something that would make them better off. What they're missing depends on what they're capable of, and what they're capable of reflects their nature. So, for instance, you're responsible for the welfare of a child growing into an adult. And if you're in that position, you wouldn't necessarily have carried out your responsibility if you made sure that the adult who results from that process could reliably satisfy the desires that they acquired in the course of their growth. If they'd never acquired anything more than childish desires, they wouldn't achieve their welfare. They wouldn't be well off simply by satisfying the childish desires that they had acquired. That's why we promote the welfare of children and of the adults they become by helping them to develop their abilities and not simply by assuring the satisfaction of their desires. The development of abilities doesn't necessarily increase one's pleasure or the satisfaction of desires. It may indeed have the opposite effect. Nonetheless, we achieve the good for ourselves only insofar as we achieve the good for the kind of thing that we are. So our nature is the basis for the conception of the good. Section 7, and just applying this point to some questions about freedom. And again, I appeal to Mill and to what he says on liberty. Mill argues for the freedom of thought and in ways of living on the assumption that the human good consists in the development and realization of distinctively human capacities. So here he's appealing to something about nature in order to support his